Welcome to part 5 of the New World Religion. And this is March the 3rd, 2025 by man's calendar. And Jesus is Messiah. He's the one true God. And you are not following his word. And what would Jesus do in this situation? Well, let's see what he did at the beginning of the Bible. Oh, he told Joshua and them to go take that place. But there y'all sat on your hands. Oh, my Lord. There you sat. Let's get back into this. It's just very disturbing to me, that's all.
Aid and goods going into Gaza. Israeli officials say that during the ceasefire, more than 21,000 aid trucks entered the Gaza Strip, enough to last 4 to 6 months if Hamas distributes the supplies fairly. But with the militant group controlling the flow of resources, Israel says it can no longer risk sustaining what it calls a terror machine. The U.S. backs cutting off the aid.
We've done that because Hamas steals the supplies and prevents the people of Gaza from getting them. It uses these supplies to finance its terror machine, which is aimed directly at Israel and our civilians, and this we cannot accept.
If Hamas doesn't start to compromise, Israel's planning to go to all-out war to wipe out the terror group in Gaza and has authorized the mobilization of up to 400,000 reservists through May 2025 to aid Israel in its fight against Hamas and Iran's other proxies. The Trump administration is speeding up.
Joshua fought, Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. And the walls come tumbling down. Your trouble is you don't trust God. And there's a price to pay for that. You should have been leaning on his everlasting arm. But y'all didn't want to do that.
$4 billion worth of military sales to Israel. In expediting these sales, Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he's reversing moves by the Biden administration to slow-walk weapons deliveries to Israel. Recently freed hostage Eli Sharabi has been speaking out on Hamas atrocities against their captives. In the worst times, what do you eat?
In the worst times, you eat once a day a bowl of pasta.
And that's all the food you get for the day?
It's about 250 to 300 calories.
A day?
A day, which is a tenth of what I need.
In response to that video, President Trump has invited Sharabi and other freed hostages to meet with him at the White House this Tuesday. Meanwhile, a terrorist killed at least one Israeli and wounded several others in a knife attack in Haifa this morning.
Uncertainty lies ahead as
So you see, here they are. These little people being abused and starved and things and treated very inhumane. And y'all think it's fine to leave them there for a ceasefire. Okay. Y'all think it's fine to leave them there for a ceasefire that they clearly have never kept from the get-go. How many failed attempts do you have to have before that you say this isn't working? Tell me that. How many failed attempts do you have to have before you say, oh, this is not working? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? But y'all don't want to I just don't see anybody doing things the way that the Bible talks about. There is no camaraderie, there is no love in your actions. But there's diplomacy, right? What chapter and verse would that be found in where the Lord tells us to have diplomacy one for another? Oh, wait, that's not how it's written. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God first and foremost, right? And then the other great commandment is thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So, would any of you leaders that are sticking your nose in this Israel thing want to exchange places with any of those hostages? Would you want to go have them to release that hostage and trade yourself for that hostage, those hostages? And you go in there and be mistreated and kept by Hamas. Would you want to do that? Just some food for thought. Anyways, let's get on into this.
One of the Gaza hostage ceasefire deal approaches its end. Israeli families are anxiously awaiting the return of the 63 remaining hostages. I recently spoke with Pastor Andrew Brunson, who spent 2 years in a Turkish prison before his release in 2018. He wrote about his experience in the book God's Hostage. What are your thoughts when you see these hostage families and you see the hostage release? And what would you like to see happen there?
When I see the reunions, it really moves me because I remember just the desperation, the desperate longing I had for freedom and to be with my family. And so then I see these people coming together after not knowing if they'll ever see each other again. And I know what they're feeling. I also remember what broke me because I did break in my imprisonment and then God rebuilt me in my second year. But it's the uncertainty, not knowing what's going to happen, if I would ever be released, the fear, which is very overwhelming, and also isolation. And I think those are the same things that many of them are experiencing. And I think especially uncertainty was devouring me. And it's very difficult to deal with not knowing what's going to happen, if you will ever get out, if you'll ever see your loved ones again, or if you'll die in that situation. And that's what really tests the heart, I think.
I think last time we met, you talked about feeling distant from God.
I felt abandoned by God. During those 2 years, I lost a sense of God's presence. And I think that was part of the testing that God was allowing me to go through is what will I do when the feelings of love for God are under pressure? And it's no longer emotions. It's much easier to feel good about God when I'm experiencing His love. And what happens when I don't have His presence? Am I still going to love Him when I don't see His love? Am I still going to be faithful when I don't see His faithfulness in a practical way?
Well, how about these hostage families? I mean,
There's
it's
a good
got to
point.
be.
Are you see? I was trying to get into that a little bit earlier when I said that we are going to go through things. We're going to be tried. We're going to, they that suffer with Christ shall reign with Christ, right? And he's making a good point here. He's helping hit that home, what I was saying about that. He suffered imprisonment. And if you all have never been a shut in, where you were just alone with God and you had nobody to come to you, then you don't understand when it feels like no one is fighting for you, and you feel like that somehow you've done something and you've lost God, because it feels like he's not blessing you anymore. And it's part of the trying. It's part of the trying. And get into these situations, a lot of people would just leave. And they would turn their back on the Lord. But where I lost so very much, and I went through so very much, and I reached this really dark um, place where I wasn't sure if the Lord was hearing me anymore. And I've been walking through that valley, and I talk to the Lord every day. And the devil plays that, well, wouldn't God be doing this? Wouldn't God be doing that card? And a few days ago, I came to the breaking point on that. And I said, it's like this: the Lord is with me. Whether I see him moving or not, he is with me, because he has promised to never leave me nor forsake me. This I believe, this I know is true. Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. And when we get into these places and the trying is getting so hard. But I'm going to ask this question: where would I go? Where would I go if not to the Lord? There is no other option for me. There's no place I want to go. There's no place I want to be. There's nothing in this world that I want except for to please God. That is all I want. So where would I go? Because to turn my back on the Lord is not an option for me. It will never be an option for me. So where would I go if not to the Lord? Because I'm not going to Satan. I don't want anything he has to offer. Just something to think about in your walk. Ask yourself these questions. Where would you go? Because our faith is going to be tried. And we are going to be tested every day. What we do matters.
Look, these are God's chosen people. I don't know, some of them may be faithful. I'm sure many of them turn to God that time. Can you imagine what they're going through and what they're experiencing, not knowing, and maybe even blaming God? Is that something that happens? Do you blame God for what happens to you?
It's hard not to. And this is something that happens not only in desperate situations like imprisonment or being a hostage, but people go through this when they go into a crisis. You know, we blame God, and especially for those of us who are believers, we say, God, why aren't you intervening? This is the problem of suffering, right? If God is all powerful and He's loving, and I had to make a conscious decision to repeat again and again, no, God, you are faithful.
Here's the thing. Not all of us blame God for the situations we go through. We know God has a purpose and a plan, some of us. So we don't blame God. We accept it. We accept what God is permitting, because we know Romans 8:28, that all things work to the greater good to those that love the Lord and who are called according to His purpose. And if you believe that, then you don't blame God. You accept where you are, and you know that God is going to turn it for your good, whatever's happening. That's what we know as true believers.
Well, you do love me, even if I don't feel it, even if I don't see it. You are good. You are true. To say these things, even when my emotions are in turmoil and in darkness, but with my will, I can choose to speak what is true.
You worked 23 years in Turkey, 2 years in prison there, so I think you know the culture and the society very well. You probably are very familiar with Erdogan.
Well,
He recently...
I've gone over my time again. I will see you in the next part.